Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahushai, Ba'ishim, Rakakodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Ba'ishim, Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to Ya'akim out there pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the Brother Rahaya with another video, and I'll be profiling a video on RT America titled, Again, We Hear the Mantra of Regime Change in Iran, former Pentagon official says. This video is just an update to this upcoming World War III, that third woe, that battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, or that War of Armageddon, where Yahweh Ba'ishim Yahushai is going to gather you heathen nations down into that Middle Eastern region to judge you for touching the apple of his eye, the true children of Israel, who are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and nothing will happen to avert this prophecy from coming to its fulfillment. No peace treaties, peace talks, or anything like that. Everything's been set in stone. As it says in Isaiah 55, verse 11, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth, through the mouths of his prophets, the men of the Lord, chiefly GMS or Great Millstone, going out there on the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles like this, rightly dividing the word and revealing the truth of what these scriptures are saying. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it.
And for more on the looming possibility of an added troop presence in the Middle East, let's turn to former Pentagon official Mike Maloof. Mike, the DOD just outright denies the talk of some 14,000 soldiers, but they don't deny that a smaller deployment is in the offing. Where do you suspect they'd be going? More to Saudi Arabia or elsewhere, like along the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts here.
And when you understand these scriptures, you don't have to worry about a multitude of moving parts. You know what the exact answer is. This is Joel 2, verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the Northern Army, the North American Army, the United States military, and it's going to be more than just 14,000 troops, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, the Middle East, more specifically Saudi Arabia, which is going to be the main staging ground for this upcoming war with Iran, with his face toward the East Sea and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. When we go to a map of the Middle East, you have Saudi Arabia right here, and with his face toward the East Sea, you have the Persian Gulf and the Tigris and Euphrates River to the northeast, and then you have Iran, and with his hinder part toward the utmost sea, or behind him, is the Red Sea. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. There's going to be a mass slaughter of U.S. military personnel in that Middle Eastern region. If you're a U.S. soldier, or really any military soldier that finds yourself in the Middle East for this battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, you better come to terms with that being your final resting place.
And both domestic and foreign. And I think what's happening is that the United States is continuing to move contingencies into Saudi Arabia. For defensive purposes, but those are primarily for Patriot batteries and what have you. There's a message here, and what's a little disturbing is that we're hearing once again the mantra of regime change in Iran, not only from the Israelis, but Pompeo now echoing that same thing. And I remember what happened when we talked regime change in Libya. There was no second-day plan, and I don't hear anything along that line. A lot, as the correspondent said, the idea is to set up a deterrence to try and dissuade Iran from initiating anything. The U.S. believes that they were the ones responsible, for example, in hitting the oil wells in Saudi Arabia. That's still a bone of contention with folks, and Iranians vehemently deny. The Iranians deny that. But clearly it's to set up a deterrence. One of the things the United States is, and Undersecretary Rood from the Defense Department was expressed concerns about information which he has not revealed in detail about Iran moving short-range ballistic missiles into Iraq. So but again, we don't. There's no evidence.
Yeah.
We haven't seen it, and a lot of this, I'm just wondering if they're building this crescendo of anticipation and trying to set up a self-fulfilling prophecy by developing these forces, putting them in, waiting for an incident to occur, and then having one of our assets attacked because of provocation,
right.
And boom, we're off and running. Now, the other aspect of this is given that the United States is so focused on impeachment talk and the elections, there's a concern that some activities may go on outside and draw our attention away from it, given that these elements
like a new
are
shiny object.
Things could be happening on the outside, and that's why the deterrence is there, but the deterrence may not be sufficient.
But Mike, it seemed like after those oil well attacks, it seemed like the tensions between the U.S. and Iran were simmering down. Mm-hmm. There was 1,500 troops deployed. Right. You know, there was a kerfuffle about that, and then they got over that in September. Yeah. So why this consideration right now? What about the timing? I mean, you say it seems like maybe a deterrent act, but is there any chance that this is kind of a veiled offensive?
That's what I'm concerned about. Judging from that conversation that we just heard
between Pompeo
and Netanyahu, that is of concern. Is there something else brewing? Because Trump himself says, look, I want to get forces out of the Middle East. And you got these two characters saying, we want regime change, basically. And once again,
Jeremiah 49, verse 20, therefore, hear the counsel of Yahweh that he hath taken against Edom, you so-called Caucasians, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Those imposter Amalekite Edomites in the land of Israel right now calling themselves Israelis, they're going to orchestrate some kind of false flag or a provocative situation to justify the United States of America joining a war against Iran with them. That's the spirit. Look what we have right here. Support Israel, free flag pin. And not only is a war against Iran going to drag in the United States, but it's going to drag in other nations like Russia and China into it on the side of Iran. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. What did we just hear from that former Pentagon official? Pompeo and Netanyahu are talking about regime change in Iran. The U.S. has become nothing more than a puppet and a lapdog to the state of Israel.
Are the neocons taking over things once again?
Here's another thing that doesn't make sense, at least not to me. The shocking move by Russia, who has been an ally with Iran during all of this drama. Yeah. Today, we're learning that Moscow is suspending a joint research project with Iran because of their move to resume uranium enrichment. Mm-hmm. This is pretty confounding to me because it sounds like Moscow is using its influence with Iran to steer them back towards the rules of the JCPOA. Why would they do that?
Well, because, frankly, Moscow has not dropped out of the JCPOA.
At the end of the day, again, it doesn't matter. Peace treaties aren't going to keep this war from happening. And once war with Iran starts, Russia's going to be their main ally. This is Ezekiel 38. I'm going to start at verse 1. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, which is the biblical name for Russia, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. This is Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai, putting those Russians back into that old confrontational Soviet Union spirit. And I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, and all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, their military equipment, the S-400 anti-missile defense system, fighter jets, tanks, soldiers, you name it. It's not just U.S. military personnel that are being gathered down into that Middle Eastern region. Verse 5, Persia, which is the ancient name for Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet, And a couple of weeks ago, you had the Russian-African Summit, where Russia was meeting a bunch of different leaders of African nations, which included Ethiopia, to create new business ties. And whenever major nations create business ties between each other, there's always a military application to it as well. Gomer, which is Turkey and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the North Quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. Russia, or Gog, is going to be a guard unto these smaller nations to protect them from the United States and the state of Israel and any other military force that comes against them.
They want to continue its enforcement. And in fact, Moscow has announced that they're going to be boosting Bushehr, the second reactor in Bushehr. The whole idea is if Moscow can go in and assist Iran on its nuclear development, then they can maybe keep down this problem that would be a provocation for a possible military strike.
Wow. So it seems like everybody else is still...
As I said, there's a lot of moving parts here.
Everyone's moving to keep the JCPOA together, except the Trump administration. Neocons moving troops at lots.
And you have Iran just sort of slowly ratcheting things up. They can pull it back now. Florida, where this enrichment is supposed to occur, was meant to be more of a research area for medical research with isotopes. And the Russians, that's what the Russians were going to help them on, and that would be allowed under the JCPOA, the Iranian nuclear agreement. This isn't going to work now. Well, no, because it's two different things. I mean, you only enrich for the purpose of nuclear weapons.
All right, we'll have to leave it right there. A lot of moving parts, like you said. Mike Maloof, thank you for sharing your expertise.
Pleasure.
War with Iran is inevitable, and it's going to play into the bigger battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. A war with Iran and regime change has always been on the docket for the United States of America. On the one hand, to control the oil trade in the Middle East, and on the other hand, to balkanize the Middle East and make these other nations weak compared to the state of Israel so they could be the main hegemon in the region. Just look up the Oded Yinon plan. Here's a quick video from General Wesley Clark titled, "Speeches That Still Matter, General Wesley Clark on U.S. going to war in 7 countries in 5 years."
Iraq, not Iran. I knew why, because I'd been through the Pentagon right after 9/11. About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do."
The Project for a New American Century.
Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda? He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq."
Iraq, the war with Iraq, Syria, the Syrian civil war, Lebanon, Libya, which had a police action by NATO and the U.S., Somalia, which has a U.S. Special Forces operators in it, and Sudan, you have the South Sudanese civil war.
And then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Finishing off Iran. But remember, before this was a strategy of the United States of America and the State of Israel, First and foremost, it's the will of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai to bring about this battle in the valley of Jehoshaphat. Close it out in Joel chapter 3. I'm going to start at verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war with Iran, the battle in the valley of Jehoshaphat, World War III, that war of Armageddon. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. The United States of America, the State of Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, Turkey, the UK, France, Germany, etc., etc. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. All these nations around the planet are gearing up for war. Russia announced their new hypersonic glider technology. China just had a military parade celebrating 70 years of communist rule where they unveiled new nuclear-capable missiles. And the U.S. just recently announced a $22 billion plan to build more nuclear subs. This is an article from activistpost.com. I'm going to just read the title. U.S. Navy places $22 billion order for nuclear subs in most expensive shipbuilding contract ever. I wonder what they're getting geared up for. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, you Edomites, or so-called Caucasians, you Ishmaelites, or so-called Arabs, you Moabites, or so-called Chinese, you Ammonites, or so-called Japanese, you Elamites, or so-called East Indians, you Hamites, or so-called Africans, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh. And those mighty ones are the death angels of the Most High, holding back this destruction, waiting to get the order from the Most High to release it. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, or Yahweh's Shaphat, Yahweh's judgment, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about, for again touching the apple of the Most High's eye, the children of Israel, from slavery in the past all the way up until today, especially by you Edomites, putting Planned Parenthoods in our neighborhoods, giving us poisonous food and water to drink and eat, and shooting down our men and women in the streets by these cops. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. And this day is near. Our salvation is nearer than what we believed. So to you sincere Akim out there, just keep strong and keep pushing this word as hard as you can to make your calling and election sure and be saved from these coming terrible times of Jacob's trouble. And as always, I'm going to say a Baba Bol, Kwam Yasharala. Till next time, Shalom.